Welcome back to the Write It Down podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Murata, bringing you one-on-one interviews to challenge, inspire, and encourage. Up next is the representative for After the Long Walk, a nonprofit which is the Suicide Prevention Hotline for EOD Techs, Jeff Truex. Jeff is a retired Army EOD Tech. If you're wondering what an EOD Tech is, I was as well, and he did share with us what exactly an EOD Tech for the Army does. But it's a highly trained professional who locates and disposes explosives. So think bomb squad. So pretty much a VA, if you ask me. But super excited that Jeff came on. He definitely is just super passionate for serving our country and then now helping those who have served our country that struggle with any sort of PTSD or suicidal thoughts. So I'm thrilled to have him on. This episode is an installment of the Over Never Out concert series for the concert happening on February 21st of this year, 2025, at John Bon Jovi's in Nashville. I'm super thrilled to share his story, and I know you guys are going to learn a thing or two from this episode. You know what to do. Sit back, relax, and get your pens ready because this is Write It Down. Welcome back to the Write It Down podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Murata, bringing you one-on-one interviews to challenge, inspire, and encourage. Right now, I am hosting Jeff Truex. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Happy to be
I'm
here.
pumped to have you as a representative of After the Long Walk, suicide prevention for EOD techs. But first and foremost, pretend you're talking to a young lady that went to the University of Florida and has zero clue what an EOD tech is. And I can assure you there are plenty of people listening right now that don't know what an EOD tech is. And I sure as heck didn't until I did some research on you. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about what an EOD tech is.
Okay. I'll spare you the long half
Short,
century
medium,
history.
give us what we need.
So the weapon of choice in Afghanistan and Iraq is a IED next to an AK-47. And they put them in the roads, they put them in the streets, they put them in pressure cookers, they hide them all over the place. An EOD guy is an explosive ordnance disposal technician. So bomb squad, for lack of a better term. During the global war on terror, our primary job was to keep the roads safe. You've all probably seen big explosions in the middle of the road, blowing up our trucks, their trucks, whatever drove past it. Our job was to disarm those, keep the roads safe, take them apart, blow it up someplace else. We also take care of our ordnance. If the Air Force drops a bomb and it doesn't blow up, we'll go up and we'll disable that, remove it, and blow it up someplace else, as well as chemical and biological and nuclear materials.
Wow. Okay,
Included.
so can you give us a story that you're allowed to share on air of
No,
maybe you can't
just
share
kidding.
any? I was gonna say, oh my goodness, like, is there any like information that you can give us of maybe a situation where this has occurred? Or I mean, honestly, like and I'm gonna say we as like a whole of people who might not know what a EOD tech is until you continue to tell us some of the just situations you've been in, but I've seen stuff in movies and that's about
Oh
it.
yeah, yeah.
Like, So is there a certain, maybe a better question is there a scene that has happened in real life that you would like to see in a movie to really depict what happens?
It's funny because I was thinking about this morning, and I've said it often. Um, the life of an EOD guy, usually it's a two, maybe three-man team, is about 23 hours of absolute boredom and 1 hour of sheer terror multiplied by 365. So
Yeah.
it's a little weird, but there's always a weird thing that happens. Um, um, I don't know what pops into my head, but there's the movie Speed with Keanu Reeves back in the day where
Okay.
he's looking down and the terrorist was a cop and he had the gold watch, and then he got his retirement present and incorporated that into the bomb, and Keanu Reeves looks under the bus and there's the gold watch as the bomb. Pretty cliche in Hollywood. That would probably never happen. So I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that in real life at all. Um, I think I think one of the funniest stories I have is we were searching a building in Iraq outside of Baghdad. It was a college slash other research place, and my team was tasked with finding the weapons of mass destruction, and we searched lots of dual use facilities where it'd be a sprinkler factory and they'd make submunitions. So we'd have to run into both. And this was a college campus. They did some research and things. And we had multiple ways of getting into buildings. But it's always easier and always better if you have the key and you can unlock the door. So we meet the groundskeeper, and he says he has no keys. He has no keys. The interpreter, says the keys were taken away. And so I looked at my partner at the time, and he looked at me, and I said, okay, we'll get the door open. And we took a fire extinguisher and we threw it through a plate glass door. And suddenly the keys appeared in his hand, and every door was unlocked, and we were able to get through and inspect the place and not damage anything anymore. So a little bit of violence went a long way. And
Yeah.
we
Wow.
got all the locks undone without having to blow anything up. So
Wow.
our goal is not to blow things up as much as we like to do it.
Yeah.
We'd much rather avoid something or find another route, or just not blow up a building to get inside. We'd rather unlock the door and walk through than
A little more civilized. Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Right.
Especially if you're looking for something. In our case, we were looking for documents or evidence or things like that. If we blow up the building, it's harder to find. So we found a way.
Wow. So how long were you an EOD tech?
17 years.
Wow. Okay. And
Yeah, I got all my fingers.
so with that, so what was the I guess driving force for you to step away from that? I mean, 17 years is a long time to be doing something that's, as you say, bored until it's not. I mean,
Yeah.
essentially it's like you're twiddling your thumbs and then you're like, oh crap, like we could all be nuked right now. So
Yeah.
what is like you do that for 17 years and then you have to eventually get to a point where you're like, all right, like I need to maybe explore something else, maybe become a librarian or, go work at Publix or something a little more mild that you're not fighting for your life or other people's lives for. So what was that turning point that made you step away from that position?
Well, I was military, so we retire at some point, and I can I can can't pinpoint the I don't remember the exact day, but I remember the moment. I was in a classroom. I had was running a schoolhouse at the time in at AP Hill, Virginia, or Fort Walker, Virginia. And I walked into a classroom, and there was a soldier, and he was very, very young. I wondered if his mom knew where he was, and I looked at him and I asked him what year he was born, and he said, "Sergeant, I was born in 1991." And I had joined the Army in 1990. So I had been in the Army longer than he'd been alive, and I figured it was time to let the next generation kind of do it, and I'll sit back in the wings. And I've never stopped supporting the EOD field. I've never stopped celebrating the EOD field or helping. But I'm no longer a bomb squad guy. I'll happily light fireworks off
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
4th of July, but I'm no longer a bomb squad guy, and that's something a lot of us have trouble letting go of. The Army makes us retire at certain points, and a lot of us, we've done it for so long, and it's such a part of us that we got to remember, I'm not a bomb tech anymore, so it's your turn to do it, and then we
Right.
judge them and tell them they're doing it wrong.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's always nice to be the
Yeah,
judger, right?
yeah.
So what does like, I guess, school or training or like getting into that field? Like if I wanted to go become an EOD tech, what are the steps I would have to take to become or be involved in that?
Drink heavily. No,
I
we
was gonna say, I just want to put a little disclaimer. I am not looking to do that. But for those that are listening, they're like, wow, that is a really interesting thing, and I haven't thought about that.
So EOD school is one of the longest and one of the hardest schools in the military. We not necessarily physically, but it's getting a little more, been getting more physical over the years. But currently the schoolhouse is in Eglin Air Force Base down in Florida.
Okay.
And all four services, maybe five, I don't think a Space Force guy had gone through yet, but all four services go to the same school. And each service has their own qualifiers as well. The Army goes to a school in Virginia. Air Force, I believe, goes to a school in Texas. The Marines, once they eat so many crayons, they're allowed to go. And the Navy has their qualifiers as well. But everybody ends up in Florida, and they go through about a 9-month school where you learn the absolute basics from, identifying what ordnance is, and then learning how to use explosives correctly, and then different categories of ordnance and how to render those safe. And then they put it all together, and there's practical exercises over and over and over again. You really, really want to be good at what you do when you leave EOD school.
Oh, I bet. I was going to say, I mean, just that and maybe like brain and heart surgery, I think maybe you should take an extra little just because it's so technical.
You don't want to cross the streams too bad.
Yeah.
Or you end up with more bomb techs. No.
Right, exactly.
So it's a long school. It's trying. Our standard is a little bit higher. I don't remember the exact numbers, but in the military, you can lose so many points and still get away with passing a test, like 85, 75, whatever. In the Army or at the EOD school, it's 85 is the absolute lowest you can score on a test. So if you're doing something, they deduct so many points, you lose 16 points, you're done. And then sometimes you can retest, or sometimes you're gone.
Wow. Well, that's very comforting, to be honest.
Yeah. They've done, scientific studies on Army, especially. When I was retiring, they were going through the study that if the student misses this test or doesn't pass these 3 tests right away, it's probably not going to make it through the school. And we have had a very high attrition rate at that point. And so they put that into practice, and they found out that those 3 tests were very significant to the future of his studies. And when kids didn't pass those 3 tests and those 3 classes, they didn't succeed in the EOD school. So they use that as a marker, and the attrition rate lowered a little bit, and we've got some better quality EOD techs coming through, and then I've been out for about 11 years, so there's a lot of things that have changed. Some of it's really, really cool. Some of it, I have no idea what they're doing anymore.
Yeah. And with the rise of like technology, I'm sure a lot of things have changed since you were in school. I can only imagine.
3D printing is doing amazing things. I have a 3D printer over here on my desk that I can barely use. And those guys are doing amazing things for either aids in training or tools, or we used to have to wait for someone to develop and build a tool. Now, I can do that over here. They go home and they print off this little tool, and they come home with a wrench with 6 sides on it, and it works. And
it's wild.
These guys are great.
How far we've come. Absolutely.
Then you can sell it for $1 million.
Right. Exactly. It's a good business model. What is one thing you wish that civilians like me knew about serving in the United States military?
Well, I don't know. It's kind of changing right now. Obviously, there's lots of changes in the government and lots of changes in the military, but a lot, probably, I'd say a significant percent, way more than half. Let's go with 75. Put a number on it. Guys and girls want to be there in the military to serve their country, and they're happy to be there, and they enjoy what they do. And then there's other times where somebody comes up with a good idea, like eating this bowl of soup with this fork, or eating a bowl of soup with a hammer, and it's really, really difficult, and it's not getting anything done. But that's what they tell you to do, so you gotta do it. Kind of an extreme example, but it's sometimes things are very, very difficult, and sometimes you have to trust your NCOs or your guys ahead above you. And sometimes you can actually, if you say it the right way, you can make a change by being a little bit respectful and saying, hey, eating soup with a hammer is kind of hard. Why don't we try it this way? And sometimes that works out too. But a lot of people really, really want to be there. If they didn't, they do 3 or 4 years and get out.
Yeah.
But beyond 3 or 4 years, people want to be there.
Right. And take pride in their country and
Oh,
serving.
Yeah.
So you were serving at the time of like 03, 04, like
Oh, yeah.
things were really, like really hot over
Yeah.
in the Middle East.
I was
Okay.
in, I watched the planes hit the towers on 9/11, and we were deploying anyway. So we were already ramped up to go somewhere else. We went to Bosnia first. But we saw it happen, and we didn't say anything for a few minutes, and then our phone started ringing. And from then until I retired, we were moving. So
Wow. And I can only imagine the just like shock and awe of like, I was really young when it happened. I do remember where I was, but I was little, but it was definitely one of those memories that you can't unsee on the news
no,
or like
not at all.
unfeel. I remember I had dreams or nightmares, I should say, after that, where I mean, again, I was, safe at home like a little girl, but like I just remember it really was like terror, like
Oh yeah,
terrorizing.
yeah.
And so to have, thank you for your service, by the way, but to
Oh,
have
my pleasure.
men and women like you that are like, they're getting the call and you guys have to go. Like, you guys have to go protect us. And that is something that I hope our country never takes for granted, that we have the people, the heart, the passion, the resources, the technology, the training to go and, efficiently protect us is a big deal. And it's something that I feel like my generation as a whole, not all, I don't know numbers, but my generation as a whole probably doesn't think about as much because there was, the generation before me and then like great grandparents that fought in World War II. And so there's just like when there was so much war, like because I don't know if you would technically define us being in a era of peace right now, so to speak. Peace is relative, I think. It's just kind of like, but if you think about it, like, in the 40s in the war, and then there's like, then you have Vietnam, you have Korea, you have all of these other wars going on, and then my generation, we were kids when this was
Yeah.
happening. Like, we couldn't vote, we couldn't do anything. We were just little kids at the mercy of being protected by, what was already in place. And so it is just something that I don't, if something like that happens like now today to our country, it would be like it would my generation, I'm 29, like 20s and 30-year-olds, we would be in a much different mind space.
I,
And
I'd agree
so
with that for sure.
yeah, and I am just very grateful. I just want to say that to you and those that have served and fought for us and fought for your country, because you're over there fighting for us without knowing who you're actually. I mean, you know the country as a whole, but you don't know the individuals that
No.
you're fighting for. You don't know, and we don't know who's over there doing the same. And so I just would like to take a minute and say thank you for your service. This episode is brought to you in partnership with the Over Never Out concert for the military and our veterans. This event will take place in Nashville, Tennessee on Friday, the 21st of February in 2025. At John Bon Jovi's bar in Nashville, Over Never Out will join other bands, businesses, and nonprofits to raise awareness of the suicide crisis amid the military and veteran communities. If you would like to learn more or sponsor this event, please visit the link in our episode description. Now, back to the show. Kind of segueing more into the nonprofit that you're involved in with suicide prevention. It's specifically tailored towards EOD techs. And you've done a lot of different initiatives, I'm sure, with other, Army vets and active duty for suicide prevention. But give us a snapshot of what, After the Long Walk, that organization is.
All right. So in 2015, an EOD tech took his life. It was November 2015. And another friend of mine, he had been through his own troubles with suicidal ideation and things, and gotten better. And he said he just decided, I think he verbally said, we have to stop. And so he reached out to a few of his buddies, me included, and said, hey, this is what's going on. This is how I feel. We could help prevent this, and this is what I think we should do. And those things were, we talked about it, and we developed a phone line where an EOD tech can call another EOD tech when he's, suicidal, depressed, drunk, and any combination of things, just free of charge outside of the chain of command. So there's barely any records kept. It's just a conversation that an EOD tech can have with another EOD tech. And we figured the peer-to-peer platform was about the best because, I've done the things that these EOD guys have done. I've been there. I've seen it. I know the training. I know the boredom and the terror and all that. So we figured that platform was the best, and we just went and we found a phone line on eVoice, really, really simple, really, really cheap. And we've had it for now 15 years. We started a Facebook page and got the word out. And we've had trouble getting to the other platforms. Facebook has been the most useful for us. We started a GoFundMe account and we raised a little bit of money. So if we needed to, we could help out an EOD tech financially, just a little drop in the bucket if we had to. And then we just got to work. We were sitting on just one evening, we saw a post come across our Facebook page. It said help, just the one word. And we saw who it was, and we saw what he'd been through in the past, and that word help was enough. And we sent people to his room on the base that he was at. They got to him, and he had taken a lethal dose of sleeping pills. But they got to him quickly. They got him to the hospital. They got his stomach pumped. He sat in the mental health ward for a little while, and we saved him. And then we did it again, and then we did it again.
Wow.
And it's measurable that we've been doing a good job, and we just keep going. It's not every week that we have, or every day that we have somebody call the hotline in trouble. Sometimes people just call to chat. Sometimes people just call because they're drunk and they just want to ramble. But we also have times where we have seen, not necessarily through a phone call, through a social media or whatever, that we've seen somebody spiraling quickly, and the network that we've built over the last 15 years has enabled us to get someplace very, very quickly, and either get law enforcement there to help, get family there to help, or the Army, the military chain of command to go in and help. So we there was a need, and we did what we did, what we do as EOD techs, and we figured out how to meet that need and meet it successfully, and I think we've done pretty well.
I love that it's unique to EOD techs, not because you don't think other people don't need help, but because it fine tunes your audience and it creates a frequency of empathy that you can't have when it's broad. And so I think that's extremely, extremely helpful and thoughtful.
And what we've done with just organically with no adult supervision, is just done it on our own, and it shows that any specialty can do it. Police officers, infantry, Navy telephone operators, anybody, any network of people can do the exact same thing if they have a if there's a need. The framework is simple. Just be there for your buddies is pretty easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you guys partnered with any licensed mental health counselors, or do you have someone that you refer people to? Because I know you guys are not licensed mental health counselors or therapists or medical professionals. So you're creating a space of, hey, we've been there before and we can help you out, we can pick you up. But are there different resources or funnels of resources that you lead
There
people to?
are, and I'll actually I'll share a few links with you as well.
Okay.
If you can see the links on the chat. One of them most recently that we've been working with is a group called Sound Off.
Okay.
And they're a peer-to-peer. Oh, I didn't want to do that. They are a peer-to-peer support network that's telephone based. They have battle buddies that sign up. And they're vetted very, very well. And they what happened there? I didn't want to do that. So you can text your battle buddy and you can chat with your battle buddy, and it's completely anonymous. And then they also have a clinical pool as well, where clinicians they will. That's not working as well. Clinicians will sit and they'll get a text from a participant, and they will get 1 hour of free therapy, just as an azimuth check to make sure validate your feelings,
Yep.
or you're screwed up. Maybe you should follow on with more. They'll show them avenues of how to use whatever insurance they may have to get that therapy,
Okay.
and things like that. So that's one of the groups we're working with, and that's kind of we have right now the EOD field. There's 1 to 3 EOD techs per week that actually use that service, which is pretty good.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's an incredible resource, and you're giving, EOD techs and those that are suffering with suicidal thoughts and behavior patterns, like you're giving them resources, but you're giving them specifically a space to feel safe and not
Mm-hmm.
crazy. Because I think when your mind's going everywhere and you're trying to rationalize the thoughts that you have, you start to go, am I going crazy? I mean, there
Yeah.
have been times like in my own mental journey that I'm like, am I schizophrenic? I don't know. Like, because you don't, and your brains develop later in life, and you have your own different thought patterns and neural pathways. And so when you spend 5 to 17 to 20 years doing something every day, that it initiates your fight or flight in an exorbitant way,
Mm-hmm.
because you are in complete homeostasis and then you are fight or flight nonstop. You have to get this figured out or else you die and others die. That
Yeah.
is like, that's not just like chilling being a prison guard. Like, not that they don't matter, but like
Yeah.
that's a level of fight or flight. And actually, I learned this in therapy myself, that our bodies were not meant to be in fight or flight at all times. It's a safety mechanism that our body
Mm-hmm.
has
Yeah.
of being able, if you're in a volatile situation, you have to have that feeling. But when you're in a sustained period of that, that is an anxiety disorder. And then you go into the PTSD, narrative of depression. Well,
Mm-hmm.
depression and anxiety are like little lethal cousins to each
Yeah.
other. And
Yeah, they are.
one rises and another one rises,
They feed off of each other as
they feed
well.
off each other. And it's a very, very like traumatizing experience in itself, which then perpetuates trauma in your body.
Yeah.
So I think this is absolutely innovative and incredible, empathetic, all the things. Is there another few things that you would like to share with us about
Oh,
this
yeah.
organization?
Well, we do pretty well, with we haven't stopped EOD suicide, and I've learned and I've read and I've heard and I've seen that once that train is going, it's really hard to stop a train, and so we do our best to get people from putting that train in motion, and one of the catalysts to suicidal ideology is substance abuse,
Mm,
and we are poster boys and girls for stretching those bounds as far as possible, be it alcohol or be it painkillers or anything else, and so we found another organization called Warrior's Heart, and I'm going to share that link with you on the Zoom as well.
okay.
They started in Texas, and they've expanded to Virginia now, but they are a recovery substance abuse recovery based organization, and they do some really really good stuff, to the point of working with somebody, getting them clean, getting them sober, and then training them to work with a dog as a service animal, and then giving them a service dog to work with to take home. So we've
Wow.
had some success with that. We've had a couple guys go and get through the program very, very well, and thrive, completely thrive afterwards. Um, During COVID, we had some issues with, we were isolated at that point,
Right.
and of course we revert to whatever substances in our medicine cabinet, and things got bad for some guys, and we were able to send them, we were able to get them to Warrior's Heart, using insurance and using different
Wow.
funds, and get them there, and they've been very, they've done very well afterwards. So that's another organization that we like to use. There's an organization that I worked for called Boulder Crest, and it's in Virginia and Arizona and Texas, as well as other places. And they're a um, their key is post-traumatic growth. You mentioned post-traumatic stress earlier, but they teach guys how to grow from trauma, versus wallow in it. I worked for them for a few years as a property manager, actually, on one of their properties, and went through their program. And then every chance I get, we try to send our guys through their program, which is called PATH. It's a shoot, I can't remember what PATH stands for. Progressive. Darn it, I can't remember what PATH stands for.
We'll put it in the episode description.
Yeah, we can do that. You got the link there as well.
Yeah.
But they've taken PATH, and they've franchised it basically. And if you can meet their criteria, of I don't know what all the criteria are anymore, a place to have a retreat, raise X amount of dollars, do this with our people. We will teach you how to teach our program, and then we'll give it to you, and you can run with it. So multiple organizations have done that. And it's really, really expanded the program. It's gone from 8 guys for a week, to, I think there's 10, 12 programs now. So they're really getting the word out, and they're really, really helping people. We had a guy on our, that would call our phone line that was, years. He would call almost every week. Especially if we had a new volunteer, he'd call and talk, and we'd go through, and we were watching him either just spin, really. And we finally got him to go to the program, and just 180-degree switch, just amazing turn.
Wow.
We can hear it in his voice. We can see it in his actions that it did something for him, and it was something positive. So that was great.
Yeah. Cool. Wow. I mean, there's so many success stories that you've already had, and there's going to be more to come. Jeff's actually going to be at the Over Never Out concert in Nashville at John Bon Jovi's on February 21st, as am I. A group of us have gotten together, just to raise awareness for, suicide prevention for the military and veterans. And what you guys are up to is just absolutely incredible and an honor to be a part of. I want to ask you a couple rapid fire questions before I get to our write it down of the episode. But number one is, are you an early bird or a night owl?
I get up at 5 o'clock every morning and walk one of my dogs for a mile. Every single frozen, blistering, terrible morning. So I'm an early bird, unfortunately.
Very disciplined, I must say, as well.
It's the dog. It's not me.
Okay. Something you wish you were good at.
Something I wish I was good at. Mm-hmm. I wish I was good at memorization. I played trumpet for my entire, primary school years, and I could never really memorize well. So I wish I could memorize a little bit better. Extemporaneous speech is terrible. I've been reading a teleprompter for this whole thing. So,
well, it's great.
It's really keeping up.
Great work. Yeah. Okay. Last one. Eagles or Chiefs in the Super Bowl?
Is that football?
Yeah. You just pick one if you don't know it.
Raiders. No.
Oh, come
Born and
on.
raised in Oakland, I gotta say Raiders once in a while, even though they left me.
Okay.
Um,
So you know of Marcus Allen.
yeah, I saw that on
Okay.
your
Yeah, he was my
saw.
very
Yeah,
first guest.
that's pretty wild.
He was my biggest fan and the man that took a leap of faith for the Write It Down podcast. So if it wasn't for Marcus Allen, the Write It Down podcast would not be here.
That's
So
awesome. That's awesome. So go
I'm
Raiders.
good with you saying the Raiders, even though I don't think they've seen the Super Bowl and they switch cities
They
every year.
probably won't.
So it's fine.
I'd probably statistically I'd have to say Kansas City, but the EGLES are
Yeah.
holding out for them as well.
I'm tired of the Chiefs winning, but I'm a Dolphins fan, and I was tired for years of the Patriots winning, and I love that empire collapsed, and now it's like we're seeing another one with Reed Mahomes
Yeah.
and Travis Kelce. So I tend to be a hater on people that do things well all the time. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. Otherwise, I really am AFC girl, but for this, I think I'm going for Eagles, just out of spite.
When I bought a house years and years ago, bought my first house, the only time I had to do yard work and only time I had was on the weekends. So I started doing, I stopped watching football and started working on the house, and never really taken a lot of time to watch. I watched the big game, I watched the big game at the end.
Yeah.
And I watched some highlights here and highlights there, but I really don't watch a lot of football. Yeah.
It's definitely, I feel like if you ever got back into it, it would be very nostalgic. It wouldn't necessarily be because I mean, there's talent out there, but the game's changed so much too. So it's just kind of like
they've done really amazing things with that. You can see it just in the helmet and that movie that what's his name, Will Smith was in. About the CES with the brain. And being an explosives guy, I've blown a thing or two up, and I've been way too close to a lot of explosions. So there's no doubt that a lot of us have some holes in our brain, and that movie really shone a light on that problem. And watching the football game, seeing the technology in their helmets, the pads, the
and it
different,
should be.
So that's they're learning how to protect my head and my guy's head by slamming into each other. So
yep.
Go for it.
I mean, it's true because our quarterback of the Dolphins, Tua, I mean, he had multiple concussions and his fingers would go like this every time he'd collapse. Like his whole body would be in shock. And so I definitely think that the technology and then the protection that is being implemented in the NFL is definitely necessary.
They take it from the NFL and they incorporate it in military protections as well, because a lot of brain trauma in our line of work, and if we can learn something from anybody, we'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that there's definitely some benefits in both spheres for sure. Jeff, we are at that point of the episode where I ask each guest to give the audience something to write down. So Jeff Truex, what is your write it down?
Well, I would say I would rather spend an hour on my motorcycle wondering about God than sit in church for an hour thinking about my motorcycle.
Wow. Write it down. Jeff Truex, thank you so much for the insight, and thank you for joining us on the Write It Down podcast, and I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
See you then.
Thank you for listening to the Write It Down podcast. This podcast is a part of the 1513 network. You can catch a variety of shows on their website, 1513.com. If you enjoy listening to Write It Down, please subscribe, share with your friends, and if there's any ink left in your pen, write a review. For more content, follow the fun on Instagram by following at WIDPOD. That spells WIDPod. It's super cool. It stands for Write It Down Podcast, but it's abbreviated to WIDPod. Anyways, thanks for listening, and we will catch you later.